This is the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast. Agoro Carbon Alliance is taking action on a global scale to reverse the effects of climate change by decarbonizing farming and restoring carbon to the world's soil. On this podcast, we're going to explore carbon farming from the soil to the atmosphere and how it affects everyone in between. To learn more, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com. Welcome to the Agoro Carbon Alliance podcast, where we explore the intersection of sustainable agriculture and the carbon markets. In today's episode, we have a special guest, a rancher who recently onboarded with the Agoro Carbon Alliance to participate in our carbon offset program. We'll be discussing the onboarding process from a rancher's perspective, exploring the challenges and opportunities of participating in carbon markets, and learning about the benefits that ranchers can expect to see by joining the Agoro Carbon Alliance program. So if you're curious about how the carbon markets can support sustainable agriculture and promote environmental stewardship, you won't want to miss this conversation with our guest rancher. Let's dive into it. We have Kyle Henry with us today. Kyle, tell us a little bit about your farming journey, your ranching journey. How did you get into this lifestyle?
Well, I didn't grow up a rancher, but I live on the farm that my grandpa started. My great-grandpa bought him a section of this farm after he came back from World War II and wanted to raise his family here. And he started a dairy and, had the bank barn, with 20 or 30 cows. And our grandpa got up to 100 or so cows, and he was the biggest dairy farmer in the county at that time. So,
nice.
he was always proud of that. And of course, now there's farms with 2,000 head of dairy cattle in our farm or in our county. So it's really changed since then. But then my dad, which my grandpa was Robert R. Clark. So that's from my mom's side, and he had 4 boys, and none of the boys stuck around on the farm. And dad and mom got married. And Dad was a body man, fixing cars and, good with his hands. And he had built houses with my grandpa growing up because my grandpa Henry was real handy and could do just about anything, with his hands, that is. And Dad just felt God was calling him to the farm. And so Mom said, well, you better learn. She wasn't real excited about him coming back to the farm. She knew how hard that life is. And, I'm sure thankful because I was the last of 4 kids, and my brother worked on the farm for a little while, and now he works and pretty much runs the whole cropping for a dairy farm that's north of us a little bit. And he does a great job there, maintaining their equipment, deciding what crops to plant. They're cover cropping all the time, to get the most out of that land. Dairy farming's great for forage. And so they're always looking for as much forage as they can, and cover cropping goes real good with that. So he's always on the cutting edge of that side of it. But I wasn't real interested in the equipment side. I like the livestock better. And, to go out there and plant and make hay. And, my brother has a great mechanical aptitude, and I'm more of a dreamer, not a mechanic. So fixing equipment wasn't my focus. And so we tried to, my initial thought was, hey, we're going to grass feed dairy cattle, and our cattle had been bred to produce a lot of milk on a TMR ration. So that transition to grass fed didn't go well. And I'm a chemist off the farm. And so managing a dairy and having a day job just wasn't in the cards. So we put up 30 miles of fence, and, I rent several farms around our farm. And so we're managing about 800 acres of pasture. Yeah, having a lot of fun.
So you've transitioned from the dairy to beef cattle is what you've done.
Right.
That's a little nicer if you have another day job, like you said, as a
Right.
chemist. You don't have to be up at 5 a.m. milking cows and being back on the farm milking cows at 5 p.m., right?
Right. Yeah, you're not married to them twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. So yeah, it's a little bit more doable. That's for sure.
So let's get into how you learned about the Agoro Carbon Alliance program. How did you learn about it, first off?
Actually, I just was scrolling through Facebook one day, and actually it was in the evening. I should have been probably asleep, but it popped up, and I thought, you know what? Like my whole goal is on this farm is to build the organic matter in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
I think in farming in the last 100 years, we've made huge strides in being able to feed the planet, and we're doing that. We got the technology to do that, but just with every great civilization, if we ruin our topsoil, we're toast. And so I think now, my generation especially has to change directions a little bit and really focus on building the organic matter up in the soil, wherever we can, and still feed the planet. So,
Right.
I mean, we've got a big undertaking, and I'm just trying to do my part here on these 800 acres. So,
I think the pendulum has swung throughout history, right? We go from one side of the extreme to the other, and now we're getting to a point where we do need to think about feeding and clothing the planet with an increasing population, but then we also need to look at the decreasing number of arable acres and how can we get more out of those acres, not just for the short term, but for the long term. And I think you're right on the money, Kyle. We need to think about soil. How can we make this soil healthier? And what are the things and practices we can do to integrate good practices to make our soil as healthy or healthier than it was yesterday or last month or last year? So I think you're a smart guy. I see that chemistry background has paid off in the cattle ranching.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really enjoy science. I really do, and that's one of the things that draws me to the farm, because it's endless. We taking some soil samples now, and one section of our farm was strip mined. They took the coal out and put it back, and it really hadn't been used in 20 years. Just kind of laid fallow. And when you walked over that farm, I guess mom and dad, they made hay on it for a while until it wouldn't make hay anymore, and then they, part of it, it's really steep ground. And the first year we put cattle on there really wasn't any grass to speak of. It was a 100-acre field, and I'd put 600 head of cattle on there for a day, and that was it.
Wow.
It was almost like you're out west, and it's sparse. But there's some weeds, and but just that hoof action, it was incredible. We did nothing, just put the cattle on there, for a short period of time, and then give it 40 days of rest. Well, that next year, second time through, it was incredible. There was just sprigs of red clover coming up all over the field, and then the next year there was a little bit of grass. Now there was some nitrogen in the soil. There's a little pockets of grass. And then the next year, I got some soil samples on there, found out it needed some lime, threw some lime on, and the organic matter almost doubled in 1 year.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
Nice.
And now that field that was 1 day is, 4 days of forage,
Great.
And so it's able to feed so many more people, and it's, you can't till it, but just, in 4 years. So I think that, with regenerative agriculture, it would have increased even without the lime, but the lime made it that much better. It takes management, but it doesn't take a lot of inputs once you have your infrastructure in.
I don't think we discussed where your farm is. Where are you located?
Oh, little slice of heaven in southeastern Ohio. Uhrichsville is our town address. Rush Township is kind of what we're all proud of. We live in Rush Township. There's about 800 folks. There's not a stoplight here.
Nice.
And stop signs are optional. So yeah. And, it's in the foothills. So we've got a special topography here. Just north of us, you get some nice big river bottoms, and just south of us, the hills start getting bigger. So you get big ridges, and, there's nice fields. But right where I'm at, if you have a 20-acre field, you're fortunate. That's a big one, Okay. So it's, just because the valleys are such that they aren't very big, and the hilltops aren't very big. We're real quick hills, and I've not been to too many places, like we've got here. And so we really enjoy where we live.
Sounds wonderful. So let's rewind just a little bit. You're scrolling through Facebook one night and you see something about Agoro Carbon Alliance. What piqued your interest, and tell us the process of you finally signing on with Agoro?
Well, I didn't think about it too much. I just threw my email in there, and then you guys give me a call, and very hospitable people. You guys coming to the farm and meeting me, and that makes a big difference. When you have a face, and
right.
you shake somebody's hand. Mark and John are great to work with. And
so you had some Agoro reps come out, and they talked to you face to face and told you about the benefits, maybe some of the things that you should consider that aren't benefits, looked at your operation, and gave you all the information that you needed. And I guess you decided this is something that I want to try.
Right. Yeah. It's, I think it makes sense if the goal of some companies is to be carbon neutral. I don't see a better way of doing it than putting the carbon in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a demand for it, I'm happy to participate, because, I would love to put more land under my management and continue to build more soil, and making a few extra dollars helps do that.
So let's the main point of this episode is after you sign the contract. So you've signed the contract with Agoro. Tell us a little bit, or walk us through the onboarding process and what it was like for you as a rancher.
So, after we sign up, send us a spreadsheet to kind of fill out some historical data. I think it was like 3 years. It was pretty painless. I made it more painful than it was. So just because, I just didn't understand everything you wanted in the details. But, when I reached out to John and Mark, they helped me fill it out. And also I had to provide maps, which weren't very difficult because, the federal government already has my maps drawn out for my field. So I just, sent you guys over those documents, and you guys just made sure all my maps were right. And once I got that sheet filled out, then I guess the next thing I'm looking forward to is to see how these samples turn out. So,
what kind of data were we asking for? What kind of spreadsheet? What were the questions we were asking for? And how did you get that data?
So they weren't super complicated. You kind of wanted to know the herd size, what my pregnancy rate was, how much fuel I used. Basically, you're trying to get a snapshot of where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to make sure that my practices going forward aren't hindering, my operation, and make sure I'm not just pumping all kinds of carbon into the air, in the process. So
was this? It sounds like this was just a one-time deal at the very beginning, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure going forward if you guys will need some information going forward or not. But it was just fill out these this historical data, and then we'll go from there.
What were some of the biggest challenges, or were there any challenges as you were going through this data collection process?
Well, the fuel usage was a little bit like, well, I'm not really sure. And John was like, give us an estimate. So I just went back to, I see how much money I spent on fuel, and I just thought, okay, I think last year's fuel price was about $3.50. So I just did a quick divider and said, that's a good enough estimate. You guys were okay with that.
So once we got the baseline of your operation, what kind of changes did you start making, or were there any?
There aren't a lot of changes that I'm going to need to make to increase the carbon. Now, what I'd like to do is increase the rate of carbon sequestration, right? To increase the organic matter quicker. And so there's a few fields that are larger strip mine fields that I'd like to cut up a little bit smaller. That way I can move the cattle on and off quicker.
Oh, okay.
So those are the biggest things. I've got 200-acre fields that then I'd like to split up into 10 or 20-acre fields, and I think that would help me to increase that organic matter.
That's an interesting point. I don't know whether I've talked to a rancher that or I didn't know that was a way to improve the carbon or the soil, the carbon in the soil, is to just do more frequent rotations of the grazing. So I think that's an interesting point you make.
Yeah. So basically, that grass starts growing. After cow takes a bite of it, that grass starts growing within 2 days. So if you can get the cattle off of there in 2 days, you're not going to negatively affect the growth of the grass. And if you can get them to trim it off even, you get grass growth throughout the whole pasture. Then, you don't want dead grass out there because it isn't collecting any CO2 or sunlight, or so you want to get as much sugar down in the soil as you can. So you want to keep that grass in that magic spot between 6 and 12, 18 inches. And so I try to leave between 6 and 10 inches of grass. That way I've got a good solar panel when those cattle go to the next pasture.
So besides the rotation patterns, are there any other, day-to-day management changes that you made after signing on with Agoro?
Not a lot of day-to-day changes. That's one of the reasons why I was so attracted, to go on with Agoro, because we have the same goal. Well, kind of.
It's a Venn diagram. Some of those goals overlap, right?
Yes. So you guys want to sequester carbon, and I want to build organic matter. And just so happens that carbon is in organic matter. So we want to do the same thing, maybe for different reasons, but we're after the same thing. And so the day-to-day operation hasn't changed, but I hope to be able to use some of the extra money I'm going to make from sequestering the carbon to, farmers, they just pour it all back.
Put it back in. Yeah.
Yes. They just put it all back in. And so, whether it's to rotate those cattle, I need water everywhere. And so, putting water everywhere, building more fence, those are the kind of, or, putting lime on the soil. Those are the kind of investments that I want to make to increase the organic matter, which will also help you guys out as well.
So that's one of the added benefits, besides, being the right thing for your ranch and for the land that you're working. But there's an added revenue stream here. Have you gotten paid yet?
No.
Have you seen any money?
No. So, carbon, and this probably, I didn't have very many reservations because I understand biology doesn't change overnight, and measuring the chemical changes isn't immediate. So there was an option to get prepaid, have a prepayment. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was less per ton, and it was about 10% less. And so I didn't need a loan at this time, and so I'll go ahead and continue my practices and hopefully sequester as much soil or carbon as I can. And there's a benefit. In 5 years, you guys will come and test the soil again, and we'll see how much we actually sequestered, and we'll get paid then.
So I appreciate that. There are two different payment options. If you want to make some capital improvements and you need the money up front, there's the option where you can get prepaid, or you can get the most bang for your buck. And like you did, you said you didn't need the bank to loan you the money per se, and you said no, let me get the most that I can get for my practice changes at the end of the 5 years. That's great. Have you noticed any changes in the attitudes of the other ranchers in your community since you've started? Have you had any discussions with them about it?
Well, there are. I have not discussed actually, signing up with you guys. I'm really looking forward to the soil samples, and once I get those, it'll feel more real. It's kind of, hey, we've got some paperwork out of the way, and obviously there's no money involved, trading hands at this point. And so once I get those soil sample results, then it'll feel real at that point.
Right.
So it'll feel like something I can discuss with some other folks. There are a few farmers that I've talked to, but they don't. And I've sent your information to one, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of acreage you're looking for, but I think in talking to Mark and John, at this point you're looking to, get a bigger swath of acres, and there aren't too many of those farms in my area that are looking to do regenerative agriculture. So,
and as you've been going through this process, you have questions. How do those questions get answered? Where do you go?
Oh, just
pick up your phone.
Just pick up my phone.
You can pick up your phone and call somebody. Somebody will actually answer and talk to you.
Yeah, piece of cake. Yeah. So
boy, that's kind of unique in today's society. It's hard to reach anybody on the phone. It's a contact form on an internet page.
Right. Yeah, and not only is it calling somebody on the phone, it's also calling somebody on the phone that I've shaken hands with. So
yeah,
that makes a big difference.
And I think most of our agronomists have farming backgrounds, if not currently farming. So they have some real on the boots experience and can give you some real life examples and help you make those decisions. So I think that's one of the things I've heard.
Yeah, Mark, he was talking about farming, and he worked for a different ag company. And so he had worked with my brother, and so it was kind of neat to make that connection.
Relationships are important in farming and ranching, aren't they?
Right.
Looking into the future, what do you hope is going to come out of this?
I hope that I will be able to put as much organic matter in the soil as I can, because I think it's the most important thing for farmers to do. If we want to have food 200 years from now, I'd like to keep this land in food production for as long as I possibly can. And the only way to do that is to put life into the soil. So.
Oh, well stated. Do you have kids?
Yep. Yeah, I've got an 11-year-old. She's my oldest, Ava, and then I've got an 8-year-old, Allie, and then Abe is 4. So yeah.
And is your hope that maybe they would want to follow in their dad's footsteps and their grandparents' footsteps?
If Lord willing, that'd be wonderful. So we'll see. We'll cross that road when we get there, but it has to be economically feasible.
Yes, it does.
So that's one thing we're trying to do. We're trying to make it a sustainable business, as well as increase the organic matter. I feel like we've got the cattle, but that's not my most. I kind of look at them as employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my most important employees are those microbes that are in the soil, the worms. I've got a whole lot more of them, and so I'm trying to do everything I can for them, and so if we can build that foundation up, I think we're going to have a successful ranch for the future, for sure.
And I think that it's a whole ecosystem that you're trying to improve on.
Right.
And those cattle are an important part of that ecosystem.
Right.
They're supplying some nutrients back into the crops and into the soil and helping with that organic matter.
And they're keeping that solar panel collecting energy,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to have something to take the grass off so that way it keeps growing. And so we want that grass to grow every day there's sunshine. I mean, it's February and we've got all kinds of grass growing. And the reason being is, I've got this much grass out there.
Yeah.
Everywhere throughout the whole farm. And so we get 50, 60 degree days, and we're putting organic matter into the soil because we're collecting sugar and so it's exciting. And that's their job. Their job is, you could do that with a brush hog if you wanted to, but they're a whole lot better at it, and they produce a delicious product in the process.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you're on the road to really sustainable practices, and we wish you luck. I think the onboarding process, which is the main topic that we were talking about today, seemed pretty painless.
Yeah.
It didn't take a whole lot of your time. You probably made it, like you said, admittedly a little more painful than it needed to be at sometimes.
Right.
But you had somebody that was there to hold your hand and say, hey, I'm hitting a wall here. What do I do? And they could help walk you through that, as well as answer any questions that you had. I would love to, in a year or two, to have you back on the podcast and see how things are going.
That's great. Yeah, me too.
Kyle, thanks for your time. We hope that this answered some of your questions. If you're considering Agoro Carbon Alliance or improving your soil and your biology and your microbiome on your land. And if you have any further questions, go to agorocarbonalliance.com.
Thanks, Scott.
You've been listening to the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast, where we bring you knowledge on how to sustainably and profitably transform farming through carbon cropping. To learn more about how you can become a partner, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com or follow us on our many social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.